Welcome, everybody, to the Different Thinking for Different Times podcast. I'm Steve Lentini. I'm your host, and I've had different thinking most of my life. And so I wanted to use this next 30 minutes or so to give you the background and why am I doing this and what do I hope to accomplish. So I've had different thinking ever since I was very young. I can remember encouraging people to do and live their dreams and to go for it. And I remember kids around me saying, "Oh, I could never do that," or "I'll never do this," or "It won't happen in my family." And I'd say, "No, that's not true. If you think it can, it will." And so from a very young age, I thought I was going to be a priest. And that ended when I met a young lady when I was in high school. And I knew right then and there I wouldn't be a priest. But I did know I wanted to influence people and that I had thinking that was different than most. And so from that early age, knowing I wasn't going to be a priest, I asked the question to myself, well, what am I going to be then? How am I going to influence others? And over time, over 40 years of study and being coached and attending classes, I ended up with a group of people where the idea came to me to write the book, Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life. And it's a workbook, in fact, that you can get from me. And I'll be doing Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life classes, and I'll be giving you opportunities to enroll. So anyway, I wrote the workbook, Wake Up, Jump Into Your Life. And it grew out of a seed that was planted when I was in the hospital for 100 days, 60 days in a row, and then 40 out of the next 60. There might have been a little break of a day or two in the first 60, but mostly I was in the hospital. And let's go back to November 13th, 2002. I was conducting a training class. I had the license for a national sales training program. And 1 second I was fine, and the next second I needed an ambulance. I looked at my assistant and said, I have to go. And later on, people reported to me, those that came to visit, said, Steve, do you know that you also said, and I'm not sure I'll ever be back, which I don't remember saying. So that was November 13th, 2002. And then sometime in the afternoon of November 18th, 2002, I had two friends at the end of my bed visiting me. And 1 second I was with them in the physical world, and I had been in and out of consciousness that day. But then there was a moment where I was with them, and in the blink of an eye, literally not even a veil, I was on the other side, pure consciousness, no body. And there was a knowing. I knew I was one with everything and nothing. And then there was a life review. And only the good I had done, only the lives I had touched and helped was mentioned in my life review. And it flashed before me my whole life. Only the good I had done in what seemed like just a few seconds. But time, there was no time there, by the way. There was no past or future. There was only the now. It went from the now to the now to the now. And I couldn't string the events together until I got back in my body. And I'll tell you how that happened. After my life review, I was asked a question just like this. Stay or go? And I had never really surrendered to the moment like I was about to. And I thought, thy will be done. Meaning whatever was next. And now for me, it's God or the divine or the universe, the life force, because it doesn't matter what you call it. There was no male, no female there. In pure consciousness, there was only consciousness. There was no up or down, night or day, nothing from this world. There was no mention of any of the jobs I had or the homes I owned or the titles I had. Nothing that I thought defined me up until that moment was there. And it's not small-minded thinking. So the basis for this podcast is to talk to people about anything that appears small-minded in your own thinking and in the thinking of others is not of the universe. It's not of God, including going to hell and burning in hell forever. I can say only the good was mentioned, and it made sense to me. Only the good I had done was mentioned because evil cannot exist in the face of the light of the universe. And here we live on Earth is a cause and effect world, right? We make a noise. I keep doing that. I'm going to keep getting the same sound until I change. And it's the same with the results in my life. If I put out negative energy, if in fact I commit a crime, I'm going to pay here. I'm going to be punished here. But it's small-minded human thinking that wants us to also burn in hell forever. And none of that was where I was. So ponder for a moment. What I learned was the divine is in the now, because that's all there was. There was no past or future. There was only the now. And surrender is so important in the now, into what's here now. As in my body, and I was 50 years old that day, it was much more difficult for my first 50 years to surrender into the moment. Did I have mindful moments, present moments? Yes. Not like I do now. Because our ego brain wants to enroll us into anxiety and fear and getting people back and revenge and non-forgiveness and being angry and holding on to grudges. And all that stuff is very small-minded. And where we're heading, I can tell you, is amazing. It's nothing based on anything we've been taught. It's the opposite of everything we've been taught. And you really have to unlearn everything that you've learned up until now. And that's what I mentioned in my wake-up book. And if you email me, steve@stevelentini.com, steve@steve, L is in Linda, E-N, T is in Tom, I-N-I.com, I'll mail you the information on the course that'll meet weekly, somewhat like a mastermind. So here we are in a world called an Earth. And by the way, we're living in a miracle. So we're suspended in the midst of a vacuum, in the midst of nothing, floating, probably in relation to the size of the universe on a grain of sand, but let's call it a marble. A marble called the Earth that has everything required for life. And we're floating around, a technically correct description of the sun is this: an exposed nuclear fusion plant. So and if you want to say a burning star, that at least wakes us up a little bit to the fact that we're living in a miracle. So here we are, floating at the exact right spot around an exposed nuclear fusion plant or burning star, at the exact right point where we don't get sucked into it and we don't get burned. Everything required for life is here. Everything. We're living in a miracle. And limitless thinking is what the oak represents, as the acorn represents limited thinking, small-minded thinking. We can even see in all the spiritual books that have been written the moments that are small-minded, and the human took over for the infinite in writing those verses. The divine never stops communicating with us. It's just that we separate the divine from the moment, because there's moments that don't match our picture. There's people that don't match our picture. There's people and events that bug us. And the gift in those is they're pointing us to a different way of thinking. They're pointing us, the gift in difficult people and in difficult situations, they are here to teach us a lesson, a way for us to grow. And the divine is in that with us. There is no place that the divine or the universe or God is not. There is no place. And it doesn't matter what you call it. As I said earlier, Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching said, when he was asked, what do you call this? He said, you cannot name that which has no name. And remember, when I passed, initially I knew, there was just a knowing that I was one with everything and nothing, which is truly a miracle. You know you're one with the life force, the force that flung the stars into space, or the force that created all of us and continues to create all of us in limitless fashion. Limitless. Limits are only human. Remember, when I was growing up, and maybe for some of you out there in the early 70s, there were gas lines. And so I was 16, having been born in 1952, in 1968. And by 1970, there were gas lines. Or maybe it was 71. But anyway, you can Google it. And we were told at that time there would be no more oil, therefore no more gasoline within 25 years. And today, the United States is the number one producer in the world and totally self-sufficient in energy. And we have to remember that no matter what it looks like, living in a universe, the infinite will provide for us. That when finally fossil fuels are exhausted, or we decide to go in another direction, it will be because something new that's limitless shows up in the idea of an inventor, in the idea of a person who decides to take the risk and go after this dream, this vision of a new energy source. And I have total faith that that's exactly what will happen. And humans, though, are limited and angry, and they want the rest of the world to adopt their thinking. And we don't have to look very far today to know how crazy all that is, right? One side in politics wants the other side to think exactly the way they do. And then they're angry and demonstrating at restaurants and showing up at rallies, and they're fighting with each other. When really, what politics is supposed to be about is compromise. And somehow, because we have no term limits, we have elitist career politicians in Congress for 30, 40, 50 years. They think they know better than all of us, and we reelect them. And so we need to change the system and develop a system that has term limits so that it eliminates reelections. It eliminates the need to grandstand and make the other side wrong, because the only job of someone who's got an 8-year term will be to serve the public. And there can be other precautions taken so that people don't cheat in an 8-year term. Somebody pointed that out to me. But here's the thing. We need to think differently. We need different thinking for different times. And it isn't just in politics. I don't want to spend a lot more time on that, but you can tell that I'm for term limits and doing something totally new in our government here in the United States of America. And we need new thinking in everything we approach. We need expanded thinking on forgiveness, and we need expanded thinking on letting go, on being in the moment, on wishing everyone around us good, and how to tap into that limitless possibility that surrounds us. Because after all, we live in something infinite. So once we tune into that limitless possibility thinking, we realize that we can change our lives and that we're one with that created us. We're one that flung the stars into space. We're one with that energy, that life force, God, the divine, the goddess. It doesn't matter what you call it. We're one with that energy that flung the stars into space. Ponder that. Ponder that. And begin to question your reactions. So reactive thinking is, I hyphenate the word react, because it's reacting something from your past. And there's no way to learn if you resist the lesson. There's been a saying about the universe that what you resist persists. And this is so true in our lives because we react continually to the same type of personalities, or maybe, in fact, to the same person. And then we wonder why we don't have a different outcome. Or, even worse, we blame them totally, and we miss the fact that they're mirroring for us what exactly we need to learn to grow. Which, by the way, would stop that lesson. You would advance. And so I digress. Advancing has a lot to do with challenging your own thinking. Who is the thinker of the thought? And so in my wake up work and my wake up jump into your life work, I teach people how to develop a level of thinking above their thinking, so that as you begin to notice what your default patterns are, what do you automatically react to, you can begin to question the automatic thought. So here's the process. The automatic thought leads to an automatic response, which is not the best response. Neither the automatic thought nor the automatic response are not the best. The best is breathing and questioning. What is it that is causing you to react? And is there something similar, a thread that runs through these events that cause you to react? Is it the same people or the same kind of people? Is it the same situation or similar situations with different people? Once you begin to question that, because you breathe and you do not react, you breathe and say, well, that's interesting. I will take a look at that. Let me think about it for a couple of days and I'll get back to you. Why don't you call me, or call me on Friday? I'll be ready to talk about it. And if you have any other thoughts, email me about how this can help me, about how I can grow. So it's different entirely thinking compared to the average person, who's usually, if you listen, they're running around telling the story as to why they're right. They gather evidence to prove their position to be true, and then they want to enroll you in it. If you think about all your friends, if you think about a lot of people that are around you, chances are you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is what the podcast will be about. It'll be about challenging your thinking, about creating different thinking for different times. And the only one we can change, so I can only change me. I'm not going to ask you to change. I'm going to ask you to experiment with your thinking and prove it to yourself. In this podcast, if I ever tell you I found the way, run away. And then check back with me in 6 months to see if I've regained my senses. No one has the way. No one. It's up to all 7 billion of us to find our own way. And we will, and we can, when we begin to develop a level of thinking above our thinking. And we begin to question who is the thinker of the thought, and place some time between our thought, our automatic thought, and our automatic reaction, and something new. We place some time for something new to occur, a new thought, something totally different that hasn't been associated with you up until this time. So if you have any questions for me, you can email me at Steve at Steve Lentini, L is in Linda, ENTINI.com. Steve at SteveLentini.com. And look forward to these messages every week. I'll be glad to have sponsors and glad to accept donations so that I can keep this going and build a small studio in my home. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you for listening. I am grateful. And next week, we'll talk about gratitude and its power and how it impacted my life, so you have an example, and I'll give you some things that you can do to prove it to yourself. Okay, different thinking for different times. Steve Lentini. I'm CEO and director of Lord and Lentini, Training for life, the best, getting better. The Lord is my partner. I think you can figure out why I did that. See you next week. Thank you.